There's a sign-up sheet here. Remind me afterwards to remind everyone that there's a sign-up sheet for the class. Ask Alan for more details. Parashat Toldot is the parasha where we focus on Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak Avinu is the one that we try to understand from the three patriarchs. He is the one with the least coverage. When Abraham has several parshiot and Yaakov has several parshiot, Yitzchak is limited, and this would basically be his parasha. But even here, he doesn't become the active player. The active player is indeed his children. There are three pieces of information you need to be aware of or reminded of before you truly appreciate what's happening in this week's portion. And that is the passive history of Yitzchak. In other words, let's run through his life up until now as it is described in the text. So number one, he is born and he has an interaction with a brother, a half-brother, but it is a brother, and his mother requests that this brother is sent away. According to rabbinic tradition, the fact that when we read at the end of last week's portion, that when Avraham is being buried, it is done by Yitzchak ve'Yishmael, meaning that Yishmael, despite the fact that he is older, is mentioned after Yitzchak, is because that Yishmael himself recognizes that Yitzchak has the right to call himself a child of Abraham, and thus a right to the land of Israel. And in the words of the rabbis, Yishmael asat tshuva. He did tshuva. So these are very optimistic words for us who are in a significant conflict with Ishmael, that we could look forward to a time that they actually accept our existence. Something positive to be mindful of. But what we could take from it is the fact that Yitzchak has a brother. Earlier in his career, this brother is... Good morning. How you doing?
Fine.
Good to see you. Very kind.
Bribery works. Yeah.
Sure does.
What part should we do?
Toldos. 124.
So remember, Yitzchak, there are three things I want to be mindful of before we begin this parsha, which we have less time today, but three things you have to be mindful of. Number one, he has a brother. The interaction is negative. He is sent away. But at the end, the brother returns. The brother does return. And obviously, this is going to play a role. His memories or those interactions will have an impact on the way he's going to view his children. He had a brother, and he looks at his children, two boys, and it's going to have an impact on him. That's a piece of information number one. Piece of information number two is that he was placed on an altar. There's a midrash that tells us that Yitzchak, and his loss of sight, is a midrash, is due to the fact that when he was placed on the altar, the angels cried, and their tears burnt his eyes. Midrash. So remember my father giving it a very practical and rational explanation. I even remember afterwards that someone was surprised that we're not taking the midrash literally, but we don't do that. What does it mean? So my father would explain that there are times that people reach a very high spiritual level that they lose their ability to interact and understand society. To be a spiritual guide, or even to be an halachic authority, you have to understand people. You have to understand their struggles. And the best way to understand people's struggles is if you have those struggles. We all know very well that the best advice you could get is from someone who went through that experience. They go through that experience, then you could go ahead and ask them, how did you work through it? If a person is in a spiritual realm and is completely detached from reality, that's a person that doesn't understand the practical world. It is very hard to get any advice from such a person. And at times, even halachic opinions, if they don't understand the challenges and the struggles, they cannot go ahead and provide that information with clarity. Being placed on the altar for Yitzchak was an experience that elevated him. He was in a different realm. It is as if he was no longer living. And he was impacted to such an extent that he no longer saw the world the way we see it. And therefore, it is as if the angels burnt his vision. And therefore, when it comes to his children and assessing the good vis-a-vis the one that is problematic, for Yitzchak, he lost it. He no longer has that ability. So now we have a little bit of an insight into the Midrash and what it represents. So 2 pieces of information out of 3 you have to begin this parsha. Number one, his brother, interaction with his brother Ishmael. Number 2, the fact that he is in a different realm, we could call it, has difficulty relating and understanding the world as we know it. And then, his marriage. When you were reading last week's portion, and you read about Avraham calling Eliezer, and he says, listen, go find a wife for my son. Were you wondering where Yitzchak was? Right? It's like this Hasidic story. I heard this from a Hasidic Jew of the on a Shabbat afternoon, the Hasidic Jew is walking with his 14-year-old son, and the Zonfeld family is walking, and they have like 12 girls, and the father says to his son, Chaimo, I have some good news for you, right? You are engaged. Really? He says, yeah, to who? Okay, if you want to know, it's to one of the Zonfeld girls. And he looks and he sees 12 girls. And he asks his father, which one? The father gives him a big slap. Like, why do you need to know so much? Next to Isaiah Field, get back to your learning. So, if you read about what's happening with Yitzchak, he is not playing a significant role. He doesn't appear until the story comes to an end. When the young girl is brought back, and she sees Yitzchak, and she's in awe, and she covers herself with this scarf. She covered with a veil. We are basically are being informed that they're going to have a little bit of a different relationship than we have experienced with Avraham and Sarah. Avraham and Sarah grow together, work together. And she has no problem being critical of Avraham or telling him what to do, right? It's a marriage, like most marriages, that the husband and wife work together, progress together, grow together. She's not in awe of him. He is told, you do whatever your wife says. God's, among the many wise things that God said, is Shema B'kolah, listen to your wife, right? So now, that's Avraham and Sarah. Yitzchak and Rivka, forget it. To understand this week's portion, you have to understand that she is in awe of him. And when she wants things done, she sometimes has to work behind his back. And there are times that she conceals information from him. She doesn't share everything with her husband. Why? When you are in awe of someone, you're not going to go ahead and share every single struggle. This is a very different relationship. That's what you know about Yitzchak. A brother, a spiritual experience on the altar, and a relationship which is, I'm not saying it wasn't a good marriage, because he loved her, we are told, and I'm sure she loved him, but this is no Avram and Sarah. This is a Yitzchak and Rivka relationship. And with that, we can understand what's happening in this week's portion on page 124, or Parshat Toldot.
How do you know he loved her?
Torah tells me it. Vayava, he loved her. Torah tells us straight out that when this is on page 120, right? Vayikach et Rivka vatilo leisha vayavea.
Okay.
Right? Now he didn't fall in love with her earlier, but rather they got, there's marriage. They have the same mission. He appreciates her qualities, and the love develops there. Okay, there's no question about that because the text tells us that that's what occurs. But the relationship is a very different relationship. Now, On page 124 in Parashat Toldot, she conceives, she's having difficulty with her pregnancy, and she goes, lidrosh et Hashem, and this is in verse 22. Why am I thus? She went to inquire of Hashem. And the rabbis tell us that she's not going to her father-in-law or to her husband, but to some external body, the yeshivot of Shem and Ever. And they inform her that, guess what? You are carrying two nations. Fine? The feeling we get is that this information that settles her, that she's able to deal with this odd pregnancy, that she sensed that there's something unique about it, it settled her. Her husband knows nothing about it. That's the feeling we get. Why? Because she identifies early on that there is one that is chosen here, and there is one that is going to be, we're not going to use the word rejected, but one that's going to choose a path that will not allow him to be considered chosen. She knows it, and she sets the stage later for Yaakov to walk away with the blessings, and the clarity she gets in the beginning of the portion, the clarity and the understanding that there are two nations here, one is going to perform in a way that will be worthy of becoming chosen, one not, that's what guides her. Her husband knows nothing about that. He has a different goal in mind, and that's what we're going to have to be mindful of. So why is there a lack of communication between the two? This is the marriage they have. She is in awe of him. Now, another part of the portion that becomes clarified here is that in the middle of this week's portion, we have a story of Yitzchak interacting again with Philistines and with Avimelech. And turn to page 132. God appears to Yitzchak in verse 24. So this is chapter 26, Chavav, verse 24. Vayera elav Hashem balayla hahu. God appears to him. And this is Yitzchak who is struggling with these Philistines. These Philistines are making his life miserable. There are wells that were dug by his father. And these wells were more than just there to provide water. They were the mission of Abraham, because if you have a well, people come to get water. If they come to get water, you interact with people. You interact with people, you inspire them, you teach them about your values. Abraham's mission in life was to reach out, to teach, to educate. He was a believer in a God, and he believed that there is a God that has values, that is to teach us wrong from right, a God that rejects idolatry, a God that rejects human sacrifice. He wanted others to be familiar with these teachings. The wells, how do you bring people to shul? You know what you do? You announce that there's a big kiddush. Right? You announce that there's a big kiddush. People somehow, because I have a feeling that these are people that have the ability to eat at home, but there's something unique about the cracker and the herring in shul that brings and that inspires people to come. And that's we know very well. And Abraham used this system. There was a well and there was an eshel, we are told. He would host people, he would welcome them, interact with them, and inspire them. So filling in those wells is far more than just trying to harm him financially. This is an attempt by the Philistines to uproot his essence. And Yitzchak is suffering. Yitzchak is suffering through it. So God appears to him in verse 24, and he says, you should know, Anochi, Elokei Avraham Avicha, I am the God of your father. And now, Al Tira, do not fear. Do not fear. Kitecha Anochi, I'm with you. Uberachticha, and I'm going to bless you. And you should know you're going to have your Bet Yitzharacha Ba'avur Avraham Avdi, for the sake of Avraham, my servant. Why did he fear? So, commentators explain, among them this Sforno, that Avraham Avinu and his mission is reaching out and inspiring. And when a person's on a mission, they fear nothing. The fact that he goes ahead and publicly declares that there is a God in a society that rejects his teachings, for Avraham is no problem at all. Yitzchak does not sense that drive. Yitzchak is not a person who interacts with society. Remember, this is a person that experienced the Akedah. He is detached from the world. His spiritual growth occurs from meditation, prayer, philosophy. Interacting with society is foreign for him. He doesn't have that drive. He doesn't feel it as something that is natural for him. And he fears it's a society that is hostile. In a hostile society, you're not going to go ahead and do something that you do not feel deep down is your true mission. When a person's on a mission, right, you read, there's these flyers outside about the 40 years since the Hityashvut in Yehuda v'Shomron. Right, 40 years ago. Some of you remember it like yesterday. 40 years ago, there began a Hityashvut, settlements in Shomron and in Yehuda. Who gets the credit for it? What? So the credit goes to an old machlokas between Rabin and Peres. If you study the history of the time, at that time, in 1975, the Prime Minister of Israel is Yitzhak Rabin, round one. The Minister of Defense is Shimon Peres. They don't get along already for decades. This one is like the oldest machlokas in Jewish history is between the two. And there are a group of people from the Gush Emunim who go to an old train station in a place called Sabatia, if I'm not mistaken. And they take hold of it and they declare that they're not moving. And the government brought, the army to try to uproot them. There was a concern that there's going to be a civil war. So they send Peres there to deal with it. And Peres knew that if he goes ahead and compromises with them and declares that he is giving them a right to settle in an area near Shechem, he's going to calm them down and at the same time agitate Rabin. So he felt that he's going to gain politically and fulfill his true drive of agitating his nemesis. And that's what happens. Okay, Hityashvut. Now, if you go ahead and you read a little bit about the people, or if you meet people that are involved in what is known as settlements or Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, depends what political view you have, there's a tremendous drive and passion. Tremendous passion. Why? There is a belief, this is our mission. Now, you turn to them and you say, you have kids here, and a couple yards away, you have people that don't really love you exactly. Are you concerned that it's dangerous? And they would say, danger? This is what Judaism is about. We ignore realities, right? This is our mission. When a person thinks that there is a mission, that is their mission, challenges, sakana, they don't fear it at all. On the other hand, when we want to go ahead, if let's say some of us agree with them politically, and we want to go visit them, we visit them, but they announce, don't worry, the bus will be bulletproof. Right? In other words, they live there with their little kids, and they're playing there with their toys. And when we go once every how many years, right? And I'm talking about our shul trip, for example. We went to Shiloh, right? But we had our double, if you remember, a real nice bulletproof. I'm not saying that it's the right or wrong thing, but those who feel that they are on a mission treat things a little bit differently. The concept of sakana simply does not exist. For those who perhaps agree with it, but it's dangerous, they're going to deal with the reality in a very different way. That's Avraham versus Yitzchak. For Avraham, you tell him there's a group of people there, they're idolaters, they don't agree with you. Would you go ahead and share your mission there? Your view of life? 100%, it's my mission. I fear nothing. Yitzchak, a very spiritual person, but his spirituality was more internal. For him to go ahead and stand by a well and teach, absolutely not. He feared. God tells him, Al tira. That's what occurs in verse 24. And in verse 25, look what happens. Vayiven sham mizbeach. He wakes up in the morning, and what does he do? He builds an altar. Vayikra b'shem Hashem, and he calls out in the name of Hashem. He acts like his father. Vayet sham ohalo, and he pitches a tent. And then, by the way, his whole fortune changes. All the challenges with the Philistines vanish. God was basically telling him, true, your strength and your personality is different than your father, but calling out in the name of God, be inspired, and you should be like your father. This is what's happening here, but we have an understanding of why originally he is not doing it. He's not doing it naturally, because he is detached. He is not one who connects. If you would listen to the conversations, if we would be able to tune into the conversations of Avraham Avinu with those pagans, I would be quite confident that the bulk was about minor items. They say that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, when he would travel from place to place in Europe, he became familiar with cows and the different types of manure and hay, because he traveled with peasants, and he felt that if I want to interact with people and connect with simple Jews, at that time, you have to be familiar with what they are addressing. Today, perhaps it relates to sports, perhaps, but obviously you have to interact, you have to know what people are talking about. That's Avraham Avinu. Yitzchak, he's a korban, he's in a different realm. It was very foreign for him until God tells him, you know what? Do it and don't fear. So that's another piece of information we get as it relates to Yitzchak and his development. So we know a little bit of his marriage effect, we know a little bit of his father's, right, how he's interacting with his personality vis-a-vis his father. But now, let's turn to chapter 27, which is really the core of this week's parsha. Yitzchak is old, and he decides that he has to bless his son. Who does he call? Esav. And he tells him, listen, verse 2 on page 134, chapter 27, Hinena zakanti, lo yadati yomoti, I don't know when I'm going to die. So please, go out there, sharpen your gear, and bring me some food. I'll feel elevated, attached to you, and due to that attachment, I can go ahead and turn around and give you the blessings. We know the story, that Rivka is listening, and again, she doesn't walk and barge down the door. Imagine Sarah reacting to this. It would have been very, very different. Rivka, she has to go ahead in verse 6, turns to Yaakov, and puts together this plan of ripping off the blessings. We know the story. We know that we got the blessings eventually. But people always wonder, was Yitzchak really fooled when rabbinic tradition and history indicates that Esav was a very problematic individual? And the question is even greater because if you look at the two verses before the blessing, we are told that Esav marries women that cause a tremendous amount of aggravation to Yitzchak and Rivka. Meaning, they both knew that he is not the spiritual being, and yet Yitzchak turns around and offers him a blessing. In addition, and this is a key to understand the complete picture, at the end of the portion, after Yaakov steals the blessings, and after the parents decide that he must run away now, so the father calls him in. It's probably a moment that was terrifying for Yaakov, going back into his father's room after he fooled his father, right? I could just imagine. I've had things that I never stole any blessings, right? But I remember once doing something that my father did not approve of, right? Doing something, and I was called back into the room afterwards. Okay, there was something I did that he did not approve of. That moment, there's terror, right? In my days, we still feared our parents. My kids already are past that, they got over it. But in my days, I feared my parents, I feared my father for sure. And there's terror, right? So that's what he's going through. But what does the father say? So, end of the portion, page 142, chapter 28. Vayikra Yitzchak el Yaakov. He calls him. Vayivarach also, and he blesses him. And he commands him to marry a woman not from Canaan. He tells him where to go. Verse 3, God should bless you. Wonderful. Verse 4 is an incredible verse. Because up until now, we assume that Yitzchak believed that the carrier of this tradition, to be the carrier of the banner of Abraham. Remember, Avraham Avinu understands very well that his descendants, some of his descendants, are going to have an impact on humanity, the future Jewish people. Yitzchak understands very well that he is the carrier of that banner. He has two children. And he calls Esav for blessings. And everyone assumes that, okay, if he's calling Esav for blessings, he obviously is of the opinion that the carrier of that banner is going to be Esav. And Yaakov is the rejected one. That's how we understand it. And therefore, Rivka has to set the stage where Yaakov can actually receive those blessings and thus be the carrier of the banner of the Jewish people. But if you look at verse 4, a blessing is given by Yitzchak to Yaakov, knowing that he is Yaakov, a blessing that was not mentioned earlier. There was no reference to it at all when Yitzchak is giving a blessing to the one who he thinks is Esav. And in verse 4 he says to him, Ve'iten lecha et birkat Avraham. You should be granted the blessing of Avraham. Lecha, to you, ulezaracha itach, and to your offsprings with you. Okay? And you should be the ones that will inherit the land where you dwell, which was given to Abraham by God. So, if indeed this is the blessing that Yitzchak wants Yaakov to walk away with, what were those blessings that had to be stolen, that you had to come up with this whole creative system that Yitzchak intends for Esav? What's going on here? Obviously, what we are seeing here is what Yitzchak had as an ideal vision. Remember, he grows up with a brother. It's a brother that is rejected. It's a brother that comes back. He sees, when he becomes a father, he sees two children. He sees two children. In no way does he want history to repeat itself. He does not want a rejected child and a chosen child. He doesn't want that. He has no interest in that. He doesn't want it, and therefore he comes up with an idea as a partnership. A partnership between the two children. That one of them, yes, a nation will develop there, and there will be offsprings. They both together will be the carriers of the banner. Now, we do find this idea of partnership, and that is known as when we look at the children of Yaakov. And you have Yisachar and Zvulun. So tradition teaches, and even in text you could read into it, that Yisachar was the one who was devoted to study. Yisachar was the one that was devoted to keeping us alive spiritually with the study of Torah. Zvulun, his brother, was the one that was designated to be involved in commerce and support Yisachar. Smach Zvulun betzetecha v'Yisachar bo alecha. That basically there was a concept of partnership. Judaism, and this is something that throughout history we have always understood, that the study of Torah keeps us alive. Involvement in spirituality keeps us alive as a nation. We cannot survive if we don't have anyone involved completely in spiritual existence. The goal is that such individuals should have an impact, interact with society, inspire them, and there should be indeed a partnership. Rambam, had a partnership with his brother. He had a brother by the name of David. David was involved in commerce. He would travel to the Far East, and David supported his own family and the family of Maimonides. Unfortunately, and this was something that was devastating for Rambam, David was lost at sea, died. And as a result, Rambam went into a long period of depression, where he did not function. He simply did not function, because he lost a beloved brother, and in addition, he suddenly had on his shoulders not just his own the responsibility for his own family, but a responsibility for his brother's family. Throughout history, we have had such healthy partnerships, and in its ideal form, it works very well. There has to be obviously respect that both parties, Yisachar, who is studying, has to have a tremendous amount of respect for those who are working hard to support them, and those who are working hard must have a respect of those who are studying. That's what a partnership is, that each one values what the others are doing. It is something that exists in Judaism, and it even exists today, and this is what Yitzchak has in mind for these children. When we are talking about the blessings that were designated in Yitzchak's mind for Esav, ripped off with the creativity of Rivka Imenu. Those were physical blessings. Blessings that were supposed to give Esav the ability to succeed in the physical realm. And then Yitzchak Avinu had in mind that to Yaakov, he's going to give spiritual blessings. You will be the carrier of the banner. There will be a partnership. I don't want, again, to have history repeating itself where there's a Ishmael and Yitzchak, a rejected child and a chosen one. And in Yitzchak's mind, I finally have here two children. They are brothers. They share the same mother and they share the same father. There is no reason that both of them should not play a significant role in developing this theme, the will of God, that there should be a nation that is teaching and preaching and inspiring humanity. Obviously, you cannot have only spiritual beings. You have to have those who are involved in the physical world. Those who are involved and succeed in the physical world should be the Esavs and his descendants. But they should work together with the descendants of Yaakov, who is the spiritual one. So therefore, the blessing, this concept of giving the blessing of Avraham was not intended ever for Esav. This is what Yitzchak has in mind. It didn't work. It didn't work because Rivka sensed that Esav is not what the father thinks. And here we go, here we see again Yitzchak, right, with the Midrash telling us that he was blinded, laying there on the altar. So this Midrash makes its appearance as an introduction to the portion that tells us about these blessings. Meaning, if you look carefully, where are we introduced to this challenge of vision or difficulty in vision that Yitzchak has? Well, that is introduced, that is shared with us on page 133, 134, that Vayihi ki zaken Yitzchak, that when Yitzchak was becoming old, and his eyes dimmed. Vatichahena einav meraot. Meaning, this piece of information is given to us right before he chooses Esav to be the one to receive these spiritual blessings. Why is it shared with us here? Because remember, as the Midrash is telling us, he is blinded. He does not see the essence of Esav. He does not have the ability to identify that there is pure evil here. He is detached, right? A parent that is clueless of what the children are really interested and involved in. Rivka is in tune, by the way. Why? Rivka came from a home where she had problematic siblings, an environment that was pagan, an environment that was corrupt. She sensed very well who is pure and who is not. And she understood that this partnership, this ideal world, people that come with ideals, you ever read, there's a newspaper called Haaretz. You ever read it? Haaretz is it comes from an ethical view of things. Let's make peace, let's accept them, right? There was a political party in the left called Shelley. In the 70s, or prior to it, it vanished when Labor ate up all the small left parties. But their approach was, right, they were the ones that were saying that we have to talk to Arafat, we have to talk to them, and we will ask them, right, to please accept. In other words, just as we are asking the Israelis to accept the fact that there should be a Palestinian country in the West Bank, we're going to ask ask Arafat that they should accept the right for the Jews to live in Israel in the 48 borders. Now, it sounds so beautiful, right, that they're going to make peace, that they're going to ask a group of terrorists to please. It comes from a very ideal place. But when you have to deal with realities, right, and that's always a challenge when people come with these amazing ideals that sound so good, right? And they sound elevating, and you can bring the youth in because it's about peace and world peace. But when you know evil is evil, when you identify what evil is about, you know very well that the chaloimus, that the dreams, will not get you anywhere. And this is a problem, and this seems to be the difference between Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak is in a realm where he comes up with this ideal world, but Esav is far from it. And therefore Rivka, if it would be Sarah, remember, what would she do? Barge down the door, and she would turn to her husband and says, it's not going to work. Forget it. And God would turn to Yitzchak and say, Shma bekola, be a wise man, listen to your wife, because she got the realities. She has the mitziut. It doesn't work with this marriage. So therefore, Rivka has to go ahead and come up with this brilliant plan, and the reality changes. One of the commentators notes that the reason the Jewish people were given physical blessings, because if you think about it, these verses, Ve'yitel lacha Elokim mitala shamayim, these are wonderful blessings. Many have a tradition that every single Motzei Shabbat, they read these verses. They read these verses as a good sign, a good omen for the rest of the week, a week of many blessings. But some wonder, why is it that God worked it out that we get those blessings in such a, you could say, a corrupt manner or indirect manner, or geganvent, as they say? Why did it have to be stolen? So they note that a Jewish person, when you succeed in the spiritual realm, that is your essence. Right? A person who is able to focus in his prayer, a person who is able to appreciate the words of Torah during the reading of the Torah, that is yours. That's your true essence. Success in the physical realm, that's very important, because you cannot exist without it. But remember, it is something that you got in an indirect way. You didn't get it in a natural way, because that's not your essence. Right? People need reminders what their essence are. What are you really about? There are some societies and some cultures, like in Detroit, right? If you go into the inner city there, you are your car. Meaning, if you scratch a car of some people there in Detroit, they will kill you, because you are scratching their soul. Because their soul and the types of hubcaps that they have and how loud the bass on their stereo system can play, that is their identity, their car, right? And some of them live in shacks, but their car is going to be nice and shiny because that is their identity. We as Jews remember that our cars are not our essence, not our identity, and therefore when we read this portion and we see that yes, we have blessings of Baruch Hashem, we're in an era that we have excellent coffee, to the heating indoors, and there's an amazing amount of gifts that we do have, but they should never be our essence. We got it in a way that perhaps we should even walk away with the level of guilt, a little bit. Don't overdo guilt, a little bit, because our true essence is Birkat Avraham, is when we connect to our tradition, connect to the teachings of Avraham Avinu. That is our real identity. So hopefully we take the essence or the experience of Yitzchak and use it to have an understanding of what's happening in this week's portion. Thank you, everyone, for adjusting your time. Next week we're back to 11:15. But thank you very much for coming. There's also a sheet here to sign in your email, and Alan will give you more information.